Evan, thank you very, very much. Welcome, everybody, to the Ben Franklin Room. Welcome to the State Department. Distinguished colleagues and members of the diplomatic corps, partners in the U.S. Congress, mayors especially, we are really thrilled to have you here today. International U.S. mayors, we're really grateful for your leadership. All the sustainability directors, thank you for being here, and other officials who are working hard to fight the effects of climate change around the world, and also to address the challenge of climate change. I particularly want to thank the fellow standing behind me to my right, your left. He is passionate about this issue. He has been for a long period of time. And when he had the privilege of being the mayor of New York City, one of the great cities of the world, obviously, he took steps, creative and imaginative, important steps to address this issue, and is continuing on now as the UN Special Envoy for Climate Change and Cities. And I want you all to join me not only in saying thank you, but welcoming Mike Bloomberg here to the State Department. When he was mayor, he implemented policies that helped to cut New York's emissions by 20%. And he understands that climate change is a policy challenge, really in many ways unlike many or any that we have faced before, as either individual cities or as community of nations. And he has long approached the global challenge with a sense of urgency for the responsibility that it demands from all of us. And I am very grateful to him for his partnership in this endeavor. Decades ago, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis famously referred to our states as laboratories of democracy. Today, more and more of our cities are becoming laboratories of leadership. Most city governments are smaller, they're more nimble than their federal counterparts. So city leaders are frankly uniquely positioned to experiment with bold new ideas in all kinds of policy areas. And at the State Department, we understand the very valuable role that cities can play in addressing a wide range of challenges. And that is why we're working directly with cities like Detroit, which is opening up its first ever Mayor's Office of International Affairs. And it's why this week we are launching a long-term Cities at State initiative to enhance our coordination with cities in the space where foreign policy and urbanization meet, on issues ranging from economic opportunity to security. But cities have a particularly critical role to play when it comes to climate change. And I have said many times as Secretary, beginning with the day of my nomination and into my confirmation hearings, that foreign policy is economic policy and economic policy is foreign policy. And in today's world, climate change is economic policy, energy policy above all. And it presents us with the most extraordinary market we have ever known on the face of this planet to be able to grow jobs, modernize our societies and our opportunities, and just embrace this challenge in a way that actually solves the problem while doing good at the same time. And the reason for that is simple. You know, cities are obviously on the front line of the storm that is coming at us. Consider that already for the first time in history, more people are living in urban areas than are living in rural areas. By 2050, a full 2/3 of the world's population is going to live in cities, and that is a steadily growing population. Now consider that 9 in 10 major cities are situated along inland or coastal waterways, making them particularly vulnerable to climate-driven sea level rise and violent storm surges. And just last week, I saw a study projecting that by the end of this century, what we used to consider the kind of flood that would hit New York City once every 500 years could now be expected every 25 years. And for New Yorkers like Mike, who remember well what Hurricane Sandy did to that city, that prospect is obviously devastating. Just a small factoid, but not an unimportant one. If you're 29 years old in America today, you have never lived with a month that was cooler than the average of all the months of the century preceding. That's what's happening. Every year we hear that that year was hotter than the year preceding, and we see the effects. And the bad news is that cities will be particularly hit if we don't take meaningful action to fight climate change. The good news is, and there is good news, that the steps that cities themselves take in the coming years can actually tip the scale toward a successful global response to this challenge. And here is why. The answer to climate change is not a mystery. It's not some pie-in-the-sky policy that we haven't discovered yet. It is staring us in the face, folks. It's called clean energy. It is that simple. And we're simply not going to get where we need to be unless we move rapidly towards a global, low-carbon, clean energy economy. And today, the world's cities account for more than 2/3 of all global energy use. That's one of the reasons why cities are important. Cities are responsible for 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And if we change the way we power our cities, then we will change the way we power our world. And in the process, we may well save it. The United States and China, two of the world's largest emitters, number one and number two. We used to be number one, now we're number two. China has surpassed us. And we fully understand this, which is why in the early days of my stewardship here at the department, I went to China and we began the process of changing our relationship. And President Obama ultimately was able to negotiate an agreement with China geared specifically to bring the less developed world to the table. And that's what we're doing, so that we hopefully head into Paris in December, able to achieve a global agreement that can help to send a signal to the marketplace that the world is serious. That's also why we came together for the inaugural U.S.-China Climate Leaders Summit in Los Angeles last month. More than 24 cities, states, provinces, and counties from our two nations signed the U.S.-China Climate Leaders Declaration. And the signatories committed themselves to establish ambitious targets to cut emissions and also to establish climate action plans so that we could report regularly on the progress that we're making. And that event showed how influential change that originates at the local level can be. Consider that the emissions coming from the Chinese cities and provinces represented in Los Angeles are roughly equal to those coming from the entire nation of Brazil. But it's not only U.S. and Chinese cities that are taking important steps to reduce their carbon footprints. Cities in every corner of the globe, including many represented here in this room, are doing the same. In fact, more than 100 cities globally, more than 50 here in the United States, have signed the Compact of Mayors, which Mike helped launch in an effort to galvanize clear commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to climate change. You know, folks, I served in elective office for a little more than 28 years. Actually, more than 30 years if I include the governor, lieutenant governor period. And I saw a lot of choices, and I know Mike feels the same way about this, that we have to make in public life. You're lucky if you get a one-for-one. Make a hard choice, and you get a really good payback for that one hard choice. Climate change, the math is so simple. You know, on one side, you've got the cost of the initial investments, which is relatively small. And on the other, you have the costs of not doing anything, not acting to reduce carbon. Costs which include agricultural and environmental degradation, remediation which would cost hundreds of billions of dollars, damage to public health, people who die and go to the hospital, kids, largest cause of children hospitalized in the summer in the United States of America, environmentally induced asthma. Costs us billions, tens of billions. Damage to communities from record storms and flooding, and ultimately an enormous drop in the value of coastal real estate and businesses. That's just one part of the ledger. That doesn't even start to account for the cost of the disease, the cost of jobs, all the other things. So compare those downsides to the upsides that come with this decision, living up to your environmental responsibility, creating literally over the period of time, with $17 trillion currently geared to go into investment in energy, millions of jobs, tens of millions of jobs. Huge wealth can be created, even as you make people healthier, reduce the sickness that comes from particulates in the air and the cancer that comes with it. Run the list, folks. This is a pretty easy balance sheet to come out on. More and more city leaders are coming to that conclusion. And that's why Jakarta just launched the first bus rapid transit system in southern and southeastern Asia. It's already helping to reduce congestion on the roads and pollution in the air. It's why Berlin created a campaign to plant 10,000 new trees along the streets by 2017. It's why Buenos Aires launched Argentina's first bike-sharing program. And it's why Vancouver set a goal of obtaining 100% of its energy from renewable sources by 2050. The fact is that some of the most promising, innovative, effective climate solutions are coming directly from mayors around the world and around the United States. Now, obviously, no two cities are alike, but many have the same goals and they face the same challenges when it comes to decarbonizing their local economies. And that's why the State Department and Bloomberg Philanthropies created the Our Cities, Our Climate Exchange for city officials across the globe, because we want to create a platform for urban leaders to share their individual successes and to exchange ideas about those future projects that can make a difference. Sustainability directors from 19 different cities have spent the past 10 days discussing ways to transport people using less fuel, keep people warm using less oil, recycle materials with less waste, and much more. And if you ask any of the participants, I expect that they will tell you they did not come here to talk about theoretical solutions. They came here to be practical and to find practical actions that they can take. And all of this matters because the actions that leaders are taking at the local level will send a timely message at the global level. Now, I am not here to tell you that a global climate agreement is going to be the silver bullet that eliminates the threat that is currently posed by climate change. What we accomplish in Paris is not going to get the total job done. It is going to set the stage and be a major jump-off point for which the marketplace can begin and the private sector can begin to take a cue from all of these governments setting their targets. The kind of agreement that we're working toward will prove that world leaders finally understand and accept responsibility for the scope of this problem. It will give confidence to business leaders who are uncertain about our collective commitment and hesitant to invest in low-carbon alternatives that we need because of that perceived hesitancy by governments. It will help leaders at every level of government on the globe to know that they're part of a worldwide commitment to build sustainable communities. So please tell everyone, the business community, the public, your partners in government, tell them all how critical it is that the world come together in Paris and have an agreement. Failure is not an option. This is a time of extraordinary urgency, incredible possibility, and together we have the rarest of opportunities to change not only our cities and our countries, but the entire world, all of which bears responsibility. I think the Holy Father in his visit here could not have made it more clear to us in poignant and meaningful ways that perhaps no politician has the ability to begin to touch why this is so important and how we all bear personal responsibility to help deal with it. So I look forward to working with all of you to help get the job done, and there could not be a stronger, better, more committed partner, a more courageous person who's willing to act on what he believes, no matter what brickbats come his way. Please welcome with me, if you will, the former mayor of New York and the current special envoy, Mike Bloomberg.